Hey everybody, welcome to Twice as Lively with Ken Heckenlively. That would be me, Ken Heckenlively, your wonderful host. So today's episode, sometimes the good guys win. Let's talk about winning. Does my lighting look a little bit better? I think maybe I need to take it down a little bit. What do you say? How's that? Is that a little more softer? Do you like that lighting? Okay. As we always do, in respect of our dear fallen leader, Scott Adams, who always started his broadcasts with a cup of coffee and a simultaneous sip. I'm doing things a little bit differently, always having wonderful and delicious Peet's coffee. So we're going to start with that simultaneous sip. And as I'm recording this, it's 4:58. So it is almost 5 o'clock, which is the internationally recognized time when it's okay to start having alcohol. So even though it isn't quite 5 o'clock, if your beverage of choice has alcohol, you're not doing anything wrong because it is almost the weekend. So let's take that simultaneous sip, whether it has alcohol or not. So good. The title of today's episode is Sometimes the Good Guys Win. And I was going to put something a little bit different on it, which was sometimes the good guys win, but you might have to wait for it. But apparently I can only do 100 characters. So all I could put was sometimes the good guys win. But I couldn't put, but sometimes you have to wait for it. So just know to yourself that in my mind, I'm thinking that sometimes the good guys have to wait for their win. I was really struck because it seems to me that there is both an abundance of good news in my personal life and in the world at large. And I think this is just a time to reflect how that sometimes we don't think that things are going in our direction, but we may possibly need to just keep doing the right thing. One of the ideas that I take away from the Stoics of Greek philosophy is this idea that you just have to get up every day and do the right thing and let go of the results. And so whatever you're doing, if you think that it is the correct thing to do and you think it's leading you in a good direction, I encourage you, keep doing it, because there will come a time when the walls start falling down, and that's a wonderful thing. So what has put me in such a good mood at this day? Well, recently I went to the doctors, and one of the things that has been a little bit concerning over the past couple of years is that when I go into the doctor's office, I have a little bit of high blood pressure. But when I take my blood pressure on my own, it's generally in the normal range. And so my doctor and I will usually have this conversation back and forth about whether I should be taking blood pressure medication. And then I do all this research and I say, okay, what was healthy blood pressure 20, 30 years ago? Is Big Pharma just trying to sell us more blood pressure medication and we don't need to really worry about it? And it was kind of interesting because at one point, my doctor and I had this conversation about going on blood pressure medications. And he says, well, I really think that this would be good because it'll get your blood pressure down to a level that, makes me comfortable that you're not going to have a stroke. And gee, Kent, you've got that big brain and we don't want that big brain to get injured. And so I said, okay, doc, well, tell me the research on what this medication does in terms of increasing my longevity from any problem like that. And he goes, well, that's one of the problems. the research shows that if you take this blood pressure medication, there is zero increase in your longevity. So I said, okay, so you're telling me I should take a pharmaceutical product, but the scientific evidence shows that it will provide zero benefit to me. And he goes, no, actually, it will lower your blood pressure. There's just no evidence that it will actually give you one more day of life. And so that's when I said, oh, okay, if it's not going to give me a single day extra of life, I'm not going to take it. So, but I was concerned about it, and I was doing some things. And so, in addition to my blood pressure this time being much lower, I'd also dropped about 8 pounds. I'm out of weight, which I think is really quite healthy. And so all of those things were going together. And probably over the past year, I've been doing a lot to try and get my health better. So it was nice to actually get those results from the doctor. Okay, hey, look, you're healthy. It looks like your chances of living a long time just went up significantly. Of course, that's going to put me into a good mood. But then it was quite interesting because I ran across another friend who I know had been going through some legal problems. And when you're a professional, you can get sued, and you can get sued by people who really shouldn't sue you. And so I'm not going to go into too much about what this friend was going through, but it was costing him significant legal dollars. There were significant penalties that he would have to pay, but something happened in terms of the way the problem is getting resolved, and it becomes pretty clear that my friend was being railroaded, and the person who was in charge of exacting vengeance, fines, penalties against him really wasn't convinced that he had done much wrong. And so there's going to be an interesting resolution of that. And, since with my work on whistleblowers, I have become very aware that a lot of what goes on in the adult world, in the legal system, is manifestly unfair. Now, that can go from things like divorces and attorneys, racking up fees when they should be trying to get people out of difficult situations as painlessly as possible. But that's often not good for those who are making money off of it. Which led me to another piece of good news, which was a good friend of mine who I know went through a contentious divorce, was having some problems with his children. And, divorce is difficult. I can't say I ever will say that divorce is a good thing. But if divorce does happen, I think it is incumbent upon the parents to make it as painless as possible for the children, to not denigrate the other parent, as much as possible. I've not been in that situation. I don't think I'm likely to be in that situation. So I am saying this without the benefit of having gone through that kind of emotional trauma. But I was happy that my friend's child, who had been estranged, seemed to be coming back to my friend and reestablishing the wonderful relationship the two of them had. So I was thinking to myself, God, it just seems like there's a run of good luck that is going on. And people I know who I think will generally do the right thing. I'm not saying they always do the right thing, but they're good people. And sometimes bad things happen to good people. And what I'm seeing is that a number of people who are just staying with it are getting some relief from the bad things that are going on. So my bigger thing is that bad things can happen in life to good people. And maybe what we need to do is to just keep pushing on and waking up every day, trying to do the right thing. When we go to sleep at night, people may still not appreciate what we've done for them, but maybe in time, if we stay faithful to our mission, then they will come to appreciate it, and that can be a really good thing. Okay, so moving to the world of culture, I'm going to give a guilty pleasure out to you guys. So I know I talk so much about guy stuff, but I do have a feminine side. And so, one side, which you may not know about me, is I absolutely loved the movie The Devil Wears Prada with Anne Hathaway, Meryl Streep, and Stanley Tucci. I just love that movie. Now, do I like women's fashion? No, I don't. But the producers of that movie did such a good job with that original movie that when I saw The Devil Wears Prada 2 came out, I thought to myself, yeah, I'm 63 years old. Am I going to go watch a movie about women's fashion? Yes, I did. And what can I tell you about it? I absolutely loved it. It was just great. If you like the first movie, I really encourage you to go see the second movie because you will find out that they really extended the first movie and they did a great job in making a mature story. You know, something that happened 20 years later and looks at what is happening to the world of fashion and to a great extent, our world in general. A lot of places are shutting down, whether that be bookstores or magazines. And the question is, what is going to replace it? Are we just going to isolate ourselves in our little cubicles? I sure hope not. Okay, so it seems like I've got a couple people who've joined my stream. I will say hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining me. And it's great. Yes, I know I have 67 videos. One of the things that I am learning about is how to do shorts, which is really cool because what happens is I've got this StreamYard streaming system and it sets me up to go on YouTube and Twitter. I'm learning how to get on some other ones as well. But what's great is when I finish a stream, a little box comes up and the AI will put together little shorts. And so it's kind of fun to see what they pick out from what I'm saying. Okay, moving to some of our current events. I am fascinated by what is going on in the world with our current administration. We now have the Iran deal signed. Then we had the problem of Israel and Lebanon continuing to fight. And so all the naysayers in the media were going, Trump blew it. Trump couldn't keep this together. Oh, look, the Iranians are not showing up. And all I did was sit back and say to myself, just give Trump a couple more days. And so what happened? Oh, Israel and Lebanon signed an agreement, and now Iran is going to rejoin the negotiations. And this has led to a bigger question about how reliable Israel is to the United States. And I, for one, can't really say I have a good answer to this question. What I can say is that I'm fascinated by the discussion. If I was president, what I would hope is that my ally Israel was working closely with me and would not do things to undermine my plans. I'm not sure that that's the case. I'm willing to listen to arguments on either side, but it does seem that the president is getting upset at some of the Israeli actions. Like I said, I don't have a fully informed opinion on the US Israeli relationship. What I can say is that I have heard a number of concerning things, and I think that the president is probably well aware of that. Uh, if the president did not say things at the time that his most loyal supporters wanted him to say it, it's probably because he had a pretty good reason to keep his mouth shut at that point. Now that it seems like we're entering into a ceasefire and hopefully a permanent peace, well, it's time to settle accounts. And so I'm just going to be sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happened. In my conversation with Stanford economist Pete Kleno, he was talking about the Trump administration, which he generally does not like. But what he said is, okay, you have to give them a couple things. You have to give them credit for knocking out that diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. And as Pete told me privately, he said, gee, I would never have thought that they were capable of doing that. Okay, so one thing. Second thing that he said is the border. I never expected that Trump would actually be able to close the border and solve the immigration program or problem. And he certainly has. And this leads me to telling Trump supporters or previous Trump supporters, or even people who aren't Trump supporters, but who are watching closely and are seeing all the things that are being done, is you might need to just take a little bit of time and wait to see what happens. Now, you know from my books over there, my original book, Plague, which I published in 2014, was about the problem of chronic fatigue syndrome, a condition that seemed to explode in the 1980s in conjunction with the HIV/AIDS epidemic. That book painted Anthony Fauci as the villain who was not interested in solving chronic fatigue syndrome because it may have been related to a mouse virus that jumped from the laboratory into human beings via growing the poliovirus and other viruses in mouse tissue as a prelude to giving a vaccination. This made many people claim that I am an anti-vaxxer because I was saying that the vaccines may be contaminated with this mouse virus, which is the position of my co-author, Dr. Judy Mikovits, and others who investigated this issue. So this did not arise from me, but this idea was come to independently by many other people as well. So in 2014, I painted Anthony Fauci as the person most responsible for chronic fatigue syndrome not being properly addressed. Here we are in 2026, and what does Tulsi Gabbard, the head of the director of national intelligence, what does she do on her last day as DNI head? But she releases a boatload of information about how Dr. Anthony Fauci, first of all, paid for the gain of function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is where the outbreak happened. 2, Dr. Anthony Fauci covered up the fact that his own experts pointed to a lab leak as the most likely explanation for the COVID-19 outbreak. And number three, that Dr. Fauci actively lied to congressional investigators in 2024 and before that. So, again, my theme is sometimes the good guys win, but you may need to wait a while. So, my book, which was published in 2014, painting Anthony Fauci as a dishonest scientist, well, 12 years later, that still really holds up. And now the entire country is talking about how Dr. Anthony Fauci is a corrupt scientist, somebody who lied and concealed information, and as a result, probably caused the deaths of millions of people. Okay, so Anthony Fauci's reputation is not going to go down well in history. Now, for the 12 years that I have been a adamant Dr. Fauci critic, have I been attacked? Yes, I have. Have I had family and friends not want to talk to me because I said those things about Fauci? And remember, Fauci did not become a celebrity until 2020. So 6 years before that, I was saying that Dr. Fauci was unethical. And so when the COVID pandemic hit and so many of the country was terrified, they looked upon Dr. Fauci as their savior. Yes, I was the one who was saying Dr. Fauci is not a savior. He is a dishonest scientist, and you should not believe him. It took an additional 6 years from 2020 for that to become understood by the public, and now is official government policy that Dr. Fauci is a crook. So, sometimes when you're a good guy, it takes a while for the news to catch up when you have done more homework than the people who are reporting on it. So, thankfully, the national news media is finally catching on to Dr. Fauci, and we can only hope that they continue to investigate this dishonest scientist. Okay, so that's my rant against Fauci. I just recently finished a book, which is now at my publishers, and I'm one of these guys who always likes to have something to do. So I turned it in on Monday afternoon, and I was thinking, can't I just enjoy myself? I don't have anything to write. I've got a couple other books that are in various processes of development, but I needed to talk to either my co-authors or some people who had information which would enable me to write more on those books, and those people were not available. And so you would think that after working so hard, I would be able to take a break. But unfortunately, no, I'm not one of those people who can take a break. So yesterday, I started on my new book. Oh, it felt so much fun. Just starting those initial words. I've got the plot outlined. It's going to be a fictional book. So I don't need anybody other than my own research. And so I'm just really excited to start this new book. So my message to you is that sometimes when you do good things, nobody's going to notice. And sometimes that period of nobody noticing you doing good things can last a long time. But if you keep at it, eventually somebody will pay attention. And that, my friends, is a sweet, sweet time. I am going to enjoy this time very much. So that's what I have to say to you on a Friday afternoon. Have a great weekend. Hopefully you can relax a little bit more than I can. But at 5:30 tomorrow morning, I'm probably going to be up and writing because that's just what I need to do to make me feel good. All right, America, have a great day.